When did Chris Watts finally decide to kill his family? The simple answer, August 9th. Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. On August 9th, Watts' behavior suddenly became strange and erratic. It's the day he deleted his Facebook account. It's a big move for someone whose wife was making a living off social media and Facebook in particular. He does it because the gender reveal is in the offing, and possibly because Kessinger's told him. She's told her friends how she feels about him as well. And I think this addresses the myth that either Kessinger was on Facebook or that Watts was primarily concerned by what she might see or know, well, as late as August 9th, not likely, on his social media. No, it was the risk of her friends finding out, and that risk was imminent because Kessinger had told Watts their relationship was now officially on, and officially at the point where she wanted others to know about it as well. This was both good news and perilous news for Chris Watts. Before we get to the rest of this episode, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment. If you're enjoying this coverage, be sure to hit the thanks button. And let's get started. So if we go to another excerpt from Sherilyn Cadle's book, Letters from Christopher, it reads as follows, quote, Nikki was excited where things were going and started to tell her friends about Christopher. He decided he needed to delete his Facebook. He knew that her friends might see that Shanann was pregnant. Taking down his Facebook was a further signal to Shanann that something was wrong. This was a definite red flag. End quote. And that's from Sherilyn Cadle's book, Letters from Christopher. Cadle also says that Shanann was starting to, if not suspect a mistress, at least consider the possibility. In Cadle's book, she has Shanann saying to Watts as he heads to the couch for the night, whatever is going on or whoever she is, know that you will never see these kids again. So make sure she's worth it. Exclamation mark. Now, there's really no need to speculate about any of this thanks to the detailed phone data review. Here it is in black and white. On the same page, on the same date, we see a color image of the ultrasound and directly above it, talk about an affair. This page, in a way, encapsulates the entire intrigue of Watts' dilemma. Shanann is pregnant and he's having an affair. According to the phone data review for August 9th, Shanann had told Addie that she hadn't gone through Watts' phone but did ask him if he was having an affair. Shanann said he denied, but he's deleting messages. I'm sure he's not that stupid. Shanann was wrongly assuming Watts' phone activity was to do with Nutgate and his father, that he was deleting messages that he was sending to his father. And I have to say, I was similarly wrong about Watts. I didn't think he'd be stupid enough to take one or both of his children alive in the work truck to Survey 319. But then he was stupid enough to leave the fitted sheet from the bedroom out in the open at Survey 319. He was also stupid enough to take the polygraph, stupid enough to confess, stupid enough to accept a plea deal, stupid enough not to go to trial, and stupid enough to commit the despicable crime in the first place.
You know, if you did have something to do with their disappearance, it would be really stupid for you to come in and take a polygraph today.
Exactly.
Right? Like, it would be really dumb. Like, you should not be here right now sitting in this chair if you had anything to do with Shanann and the little girl's disappearance.
But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. We can see that by the morning of August 9, Watts had resolved to kill Shanann instead of continue to petition her for a divorce. How do we know? Because by 0609, 9 minutes past 6 that morning, he decided the way out wasn't going to be by doing things the slow and difficult right way, but the quick and easy wrong way. So he'd play nice, say the right things, go to the ultrasound, hug and kiss Shanann, tell her he loved her, do all that he needed to do, but just not sleep with her. August 9th is also the day the doll wrapped in a plastic mat image appeared. If Watts was sort of daydreaming about murder, this was a poke and prod to transfer the thinking from the pilot burner onto the main burner. And now it's time to dispel another myth. Once again, it's incredibly ominous and portentous that on this day of all days, the day Shanann is thinking and writing about an affair and showing him the ultrasound image, there's also this image of a doll covered in a sheet. I mean, that is exactly what is about to happen to Shanann herself. If you think about it, it feels like divine intervention, that someone was looking out for Shanann, that her gut feel was being called out again and again. Do you remember the storm that cut out the power in Phoenix on Sunday night and delayed her flight? Imagine if Shanann had actually cancelled or postponed the flight so that she didn't arrive in the middle of the night. Even in the car to Nicole Atkinson, Shanann said she was going to need her friend. That was on the drive into Frederick, in the early hours of Monday morning. Do you remember that? She knew something was up, and this doll was one of several warnings. But it's important to stress this wasn't a warning or a message from Watts. It was a coincidental game the girls were playing at a very critical time for the whole family, including themselves. Watts sent it to Shanann as a way of keeping things light-hearted and having something seemingly trivial to communicate about. I think if the doll image was a threat, then Shanann publishing it on social media ought to have been sufficient for Watts to not carry it out. Also, if it was intended as a threat, Shanann would have known what to think about it because Watts would have made that clear. Instead, she clearly says, "I don't know what to think about this," followed by 2 emoticons crying with laughter. If only she did know what to think about it, as we do now. But what did Chris Watts think about it? From the timestamps it appeared, he sent the image to Shanann's phone from his phone after mid-morning. And then within about 2 hours, Watts had deleted his own Facebook. When Watts saw the image on his phone on Shanann's social media, it likely clicked for the first time that someone else might too. Not the doll image, but other images of Shanann. And the gender reveal was about to take place too. In fact, the very first word Shanann texts as early as before 3 a.m. that day, August 9th, are, "I cancelled the gender reveal." Shanann also reveals immediately after that what Watts had said to her. She wrote, "He had a lot of time to think." And so this is something that he told her, that he'd said to her, "I've had a lot of time to think." Now, while sleeping in the bed in the basement, he'd also had a lot of time to think. And so he also had a time to look at the plastic tubs filled with medicines while he lay by himself in the darkness, pondering his situation. Now, you've got to imagine the Chris Watts in the interrogation cubicle, sitting there, appearing quite dumb, staring around or whatever. You've got to imagine that same Chris Watts in the basement, blinking in the darkness, trying in his own dumb way to figure out his situation. And what is he surrounded by? He's surrounded by these plastic tubs, those almost lining the stairwell, filled with medicines, right? And so he had to realize while he was sitting there that his situation was becoming urgent and dangerous, and something was going to give. And this is why. Watts even admitting that he's been reassessing. So we can see that August 9 is D-Day, the day he finally decides that divorce actually means death. If we go through the phone data review for August 9th, now we're going to the middle of the day. Shanann told Sarah that Watts had agreed to go away next weekend, just us. Then at 16 minutes to 2, Shanann asked Watts, "Why did you cancel your Facebook account?" Apparently he didn't respond. Now, one moment he's saying, "Let's go away on a romantic holiday together." The next he's cancelling his Facebook account. Then at 7 minutes past 3, Shanann asked Watts, "Can you be there Monday to drop Bella off with me for her first day of kindergarten?" Watts replied, "I can make that happen." This also deals with the sermon on the porch where Watts said that Bella was going to start school, I think, the following week. Well, She was actually supposed to start school that day, that Monday, the Monday that Bella disappeared, right? And so that was another lie. He said to Shanann, I can make that happen. And obviously he wasn't, and he didn't. Then about half an hour later, at 3:45 that afternoon, Shanann received a confirmation from Amazon that a book titled Hold Me Tight, 7 Conversations for a Lifetime of Love, would be delivered on August 10, 2018. In other words, while she was away, when she was already on her way to Arizona, that's when the book would arrive. And we know what Chris Watts did with that. He threw it into the trash. So what you're seeing is the strange duplicity that is taking place. That is going along with what she's saying, and obviously the actions don't back up his words. Very shortly after he says these words. Then in the evening at 23 minutes to 8, Watts told Troy McCoy that he was taking the next day off and added, I will meet up with you for the fire stick sometime tomorrow, if that's cool. McCoy said that that was fine. The meeting up to get the fire stick, I think, may have also been a ploy to talk about which wells needed work the following Monday. Then 17 minutes past 8, Shanann told Addie that she was talking with Watts presently, apparently texting simultaneously. Addie asked what the gender of their child is, and Shanann replied, if I tell you, you can't tell anyone. Watts wants to announce it Monday, meaning the gender reveal. That's August 13, 2018. Shanann added that she's trying to be accommodating. So the gender reveal and Bella starting kindergarten was supposed to happen the same day, and Shanann was quite excited about that. Bella probably was as well. The only person who wasn't was Chris Watts. Then about half an hour later, at 9:15 that night, Watts logged into Instagram. 7 minutes past 9, Watts searched Google for prices on an Audi Q7. 12 minutes past 9, Shanann told Nicole Utoft and Cassie, Chris wants to move to Brighton. Shanann announced their son will be named Nico Lee Watts. Shanann cautioned they were not going to tell anyone the name until Monday and to keep this a secret. Shanann told the woman the conversation she had with Watts this evening. She said, this has been the best talk yet. Then about an hour and 20 minutes later, at 27 minutes past 10, Sarah Nudd just sort of followed up and asked how the conversation with Watts went. Shanann said, oh my God, much better. We talked. He told me he loved me back. Still cold, but not as cold. He even kissed me before going to sleep in the basement, which is the second kiss since picking him up from the airport. The first kiss was obviously almost a week earlier when they arrived when he arrived in North Carolina, and she said she practically had to beg him to kiss her. Shanann also said, I want to tell you gender, but you have to keep secret. He wants to wait till I'm back to tell everyone, so Monday. He agreed to counseling. Shanann said that Watts agreed to read the book I ordered coming tomorrow and write me a letter expressing. We are going away next weekend, just us. Now, to go through all of that a second time, just in a bit more of a studious, staggered, careful way, more meticulously, if you look at from about 7 minutes past 3 onwards, you can tell the tone of the text changes. Shanann asks Watts for something and he obliges. Just as he's pretending to go with the flow, he's also starting to plan something else, step by step. What's taking place now is a strange calculus, a sinister transaction. In exchange for Shanann delaying the gender reveal, Watts is playing along with Shanann. He realizes by doing that, he's better able to get what he wants than by being honest. Watts succeeds at misleading Shanann so well that instead of continuing her investigation, she starts writing the draft of a love letter and also orders a self-help book on Amazon. It's all too easy the way she just forgets about everything that he has said, forgets about this whole week, which she described as the worst week in her entire life, that she'd never cried as much. And I think the fact that she texts his parents a photo of the ultrasound and they don't respond at all is yet another warning, because they know about the affair as well. Watts also agrees to take the Friday the 10th off work so he can babysit the girls. And that's also so that Shanann can leave the family for her Thrive event in Arizona. If he loses Friday at work, well, he gains Saturday. Well, in the sense that he will be able to spend Saturday night with Kessinger. So he probably reasons, I don't mind not seeing Kessinger during the work period of Friday. I'll get to see her at night on Saturday and probably get a bit of nookie while he's at it. You can see how on Thursday his thoughts are already oriented to the weekend. He's already thinking ahead, and specifically with regard to seeing Kessinger again. By 70 minutes past 8, Watts has gotten Shanann to agree to the gender reveal on Monday and mentions that Watts is kind of being Chris, the Chris she knows. But he's also started searching Google for prices on an Audi Q7 and logging onto Instagram, probably Shanann's Instagram. One assumes some of this because Shanann asked him to. Perhaps he's looking for things because of what Shanann was asking him to do, and some of it maybe was based on his own concerns. For example, what would someone else browsing see on Shanann's Instagram? Does she show pictures of herself pregnant on Instagram, for example? On around about Sunday, April 14th, 2019, Shanann's Instagram was deleted, so we can no longer go on there. Anyway, continuing to play along, Watts and Shanann decide to name their little boy Nico Lee Watts, and then the final entry for August 29th, Shanann and the girls' last full day and night as a family in 2825 Saratoga Trail. So we know from her own text to Sarah Nudd that he tells her he loves her, he kisses her, he agrees to go to counseling, he agrees to read the book she ordered, he agrees to write her a letter, he agrees to go away with her the following weekend. Oh my God, everything is so much better, except it isn't. Except that Watts goes to sleep in the basement. Except the end of his attempt to communicate about their relationship problems actually shows his resolve to fix things in a different way, in a permanent way. Now you've got to wonder, why is Shanann in such a good mood and so upbeat if the end of this conversation still ends with him going back down to the basement? Does that make sense? During the events of August 9th, we see the seeds of premeditation growing. Does a would-be murderer just snap their fingers and decide? No. Like lying, small lies beget big lies. Little deceptions lead to greater and greater criminality. And with murder, it's the same. And with Chris Watts, I believe it started with the desperate idea that he had to prevent Nico from coming into the world. This idea came hot on the heels of a sizzling visit to the Great Sand Dunes. The same trip where Watts can be heard gushing to Kessinger.
You're so damn sexy.
Now, what I think is fascinating and terrifying about this point in the phone data review is we're able to track the change in his criminal psychology in real time. Obviously, there's a fabric of context beyond August 9th, and one has to be aware of the fabric beyond to fully appreciate the seemingly hard-to-fathom minutiae of August 9th. But 4 years later, isn't it so much clearer than it ever was? I think the strands that were in play, and I think, for example, the idea of using chemicals, oxy, to bring about a miscarriage came from Nutgate. The idea that Cece could have died from an allergic reaction to nuts, to food readily available at home. Well, what if Shanann, who often took pain medication, oxycodone, for her lupus, what if she unknowingly ingested some in her shake and this led to the child inexplicably dying in utero? Wouldn't that be a harmless way of solving his situation, certainly from his perspective? But then things went up another gear, as we saw on August 8th. When Kessinger offered Watts a key to her kingdom, making her intentions towards him formal and clear, that also led to Watts developing a more assertive intentionality in his actions, which is a messy way of saying this is where his motive crystallized. Watts transitioned from not just wanting to lose his mistress by targeting Nico, but to making sure he kept her, which is a whole different ball game in terms of targeting. In other words, to preserve his relationship with Kessinger, getting rid of Nico wasn't going to be enough, and he was going to have to try to get rid of Nico again, just make sure of it this time. So he was going to have to act decisively in some way. At this stage, he knew he also needed an insta-divorce to clear the way forward. So Nico was one part of it, the insta-divorce was the other part. And that meant he was going to need to get rid of Shanann quickly. Well, if he needed to get rid of Nico and he needed to get rid of Shanann, well, there was a way of solving that problem with one action. If anything, the events of August 9th had shown that he wasn't in control of the divorce side of things. If he'd won some ground getting Shanann to see things were iffy in their marriage, that's in the week that they were in North Carolina, if he'd made some progress trying to get her to see his point of view, he lost all of it on their final Thursday together. So he was going to have to fix that in a way that was different to having conversations, talking, and trying to reason with her. He was going to have to take control in some other way. And perhaps during date night on Saturday, that's the 11th of August, the already monstrous, murderous impulses flitting through Watts' mind, by this time they were very well formed. Perhaps that's when they shifted to the children. And this idea of them throwing chicken nuggets at him, and perhaps that's what they did Sunday morning after his date. And Bella worrying that Cece might not wake up after eating peanuts. Would that be so bad if Cece didn't wake up? And that's, I'm kind of quoting what Watts was probably thinking. And, having to get and pay for a babysitter. So he didn't like that idea either. So they'd probably have to go as well. Now, to recap and to wrap up August 9th. During the first week of August, Shanann was conducting a kind of true crime investigation into her husband. We know this because we know what she was saying in text messages to her friends, including to Addie Maloney, Christina Meacham, and Sarah Nudd. We know what she said to Cassie and Nicole on Saturday night when she got the credit card alert on her phone. We know that she picked up on one of the most obvious clues when someone isn't telling the truth, affect, while she was in North Carolina. She picked this up on this immediately at the airport even. And then also during the next 3 days back home. Chris wasn't being the warm and loving Chris he usually was. He was cold and standoffish. Worse still, he was telling Shanann he was scared to death about having the third child, and he felt they weren't communicating properly and were incompatible. Now consider this, if Shanann had done what Watts had done instead, in other words, if she'd played him and said, do you want a divorce? Because if you do, I'm okay with that. If you want me to get an abortion, I will. Well, Watts would have likely have revealed his hand. She would have set a trap for him and he would have walked into it. And Shanann would have concluded her investigation and found the truth, the real truth, to her situation and to what he was really thinking and feeling and intending. And we all wish she had pushed harder and faced up to the uncomfortable truth and not tried to control Watts or to control the outcome. Had she succeeded in just finding out what he wanted, the girls and Shanann herself would still be alive. Another thing she could have done is given him a false sense of security that she was going along with everything and didn't really want to know or didn't suspect an affair, but then try and sort of spy on him and try and look at what he was doing on his phone and then try and catch him out that way. But if Shanann was making progress in her investigation on August 7th, the day the family flew back to Colorado, and if she was getting even closer, even warmer to finding out the truth the next day, August 8th, she was right on it early in the morning at the start of August 9th. Shanann and her friend were weighing the possibility of him having an affair and checking his phone. Well, he was having an affair. Well, there were incriminating messages on his phone. Now, we dealt with this in the previous episode. Watts rejecting her sexual advances did indicate that something serious was up. If only Shanann kept up the pressure, kept asking questions, kept confronting her husband and continued thinking critically about the situation, his goose would be cooked. If she just maintained the pressure for one more day, on the third day she may have figured it out. She may have gotten him to confess or gotten him to give up, in his mind, the affair. But instead of things coming to a head on August 9th, a Thursday, something else happened. And I think the same lesson applies to us. The truth is out there and it's within our reach. It might be just beyond our grasp at certain times, but the truth is out there. And for better or worse, it's in our interest to find out what it really is. We've got to be brave. We've got to try and know what it really is and not try to control or manipulate it. We see how, knowing the truth, we're better able to deal with a situation. We can, in effect, be our own savior. But when someone else pulls the wool over our eyes and tells us what we want to hear, and if we believe it all unquestioningly, we doom ourselves. We even doom them. So you see, the truth really does set you free. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.